director came out and explained to us that she had been given direction not to allow anyone, member of the House or Senate or anyone else, into the facility. We began to ask her where she got her authority from, and her response was, "That's my directive." Now, we brought with us, and we'll read to you before we leave and certainly give to you, the public law that oversees this situation, a law that determines that members of the United States Congress, both the House and the Senate, have jurisdictional oversight over all ICE facilities, not whether they're a detention facility or something else, but over all facilities. I am a senior member of the Oversight Committee. I am the ranking member of the Committee on Government Operations, and I explained that to her, but she was not prepared to hear it or to deal with it. Each one of us will detail for the next few minutes what this was like, why it was such an insult, why it's such a stain on our democracy, and why, at the end of the day, we cannot allow it to continue. We had questions about medical care. We had questions about the number of detainees. We had questions about visits from lawyers and others, and all we got, quite frankly, was a very shrill and chilly response. This does not bode well here in Baltimore or anywhere if members of the United States Congress, who are duly authorized to come in and to inspect, visit, or walk through a federal facility, are not allowed in. So it's disheartening, and it's quite sad, to really tell the truth, that we're even having this press conference. But as you know, in city after city across this nation, this continues to be the Trump agenda. And that agenda is a selfish one, it is a spiteful one. So we don't know how many people are inside, except that we know, or we're told, that there are at least 20. We don't know who is ill or sick. We've been told that if that's the case, they will be taken out. And we don't know how long they're being held. So I'm just glad to be here with my colleagues. And I'd like to bring to the microphone the senior senator from the state of Maryland, who has led on this issue for a long time and is still leading, Senator Chris Van Hollen.
Thank you, Congressman Mfume, and to the members of the Maryland delegation who are here, and to all of you who are gathered. We came here today to this ICE facility because it has become a hub of the inhumane Trump policies here in the state of Maryland. Donald Trump, President Trump, lied to the American people when he said that the Trump administration was simply going to focus on, quote, the worst of the worst. That they were going to focus on detaining and deporting people with histories of violence, people with criminal record, people who pose a threat to the public safety. That's a big lie. If you look at the Department of Homeland Security's own numbers, you will find that that is a big lie. Their own data shows that as of the end of June, nearly 72% of people being held in ICE detention had no criminal convictions. Their own data shows that as of late June, they classified 84% of their own detainees as having no threat. There's no disagreement that when you have people breaking the law and committing violent crimes, that detention is appropriate and necessary. But that's not what the Trump administration is doing, and that's not what they're doing up in that ICE office. That's why they don't want the American public to know what's happening there. That's why they shut the door and locked us out. There's a sign on the door that says, welcome. They didn't let members of Congress through that door, and the person who was in charge had no real answers to some of our pressing questions about the conditions right here. I'm not going to go through all those conditions. A number of complaints have been filed in courts around the country with respect to those conditions. We also have a long list of people who reside in Maryland, who have no criminal histories, who have been detained here for a period of time far exceeding the 12-hour standard that it's supposed to be. In some cases, well over 60 days, which is way in excess of the standard for a, quote, holding facility. They are housing people here. That is what they are doing. And then they ship them off to other places around the country. And it's heartbreaking to see the names of some of these people. I think a lot of attention has been given recently to the pastor from the Eastern Shore. He was held here for over 60 hours before being shipped out. This holding cell has also become a place where the Trump administration's plan to violate people's constitutional right to due process has been front and center. This is the place where they held Kilmar Abrego Garcia before they shipped him down to CCOM, the notorious prison in El Salvador. This is where they denied him his due process rights. Then, of course, a 9-0 Supreme Court decision called out that illegality and said they had to facilitate his return. But this office, which we wanted to go see, has become a critical holding point for people who are being swept off the streets without due process, and people who do not have any kind of violent history and pose no threat to public safety. But here they're treated inhumanely. We know that because we had a staff delegation visit back in March. Somehow between March and now, they've decided to not allow members of Congress to see what's going on in there. Even though, as Congressman Mfume says, the language of the law could not be more clear. And the person in charge upstairs really couldn't refute the plain language of the law that says members of Congress need to go in. So I will just end with this. You have to ask yourself why. Why? Why don't they want members of Congress to go in and see with their own eyes or talk to people who are detained there? Because they want to cover up what's going on in that place. They don't want the public to know how their taxpayers' dollars are being used. And that is obscene. I now want to turn it over to the other representative in our delegation from the Baltimore area, Johnny Oceans.
Thank you, Senator, and good afternoon. I will add 2 observations. The first of which is before I came to Congress, my first job was as an American government official. And one of the many things I tried to teach my young people was about due process and the rule of law. And what we're seeing here across the country is the exact opposite of that. People here in Baltimore and across America are having their due process rights absolutely trampled on. And you have to ask yourself, if you're watching and if you're listening, what happens when it's me? When you are in a country, you are subject to that country's rules and regulations. Regulations that call for allowing members of Congress to visit detention facilities. Regulations that allow for immigration processes to proceed. You can have whatever opinions you want about what the law says. You don't have to like the individual in question. Because when it comes down to it, if it is you or your family, you want, and our Constitution demands, that you have those same due process rights. The second observation I would make is building on what Senator Ben Hollen said. And that's when you're a liar, you want to hide everything. When you lie, you want no one to see the truth. And so today, unfortunately, is one example in a long, terrible, running list of lies from Donald Trump. He lied about January 6th, said it was peaceful, and wanted you to forget about those pardons of people who assaulted police officers. He and extreme Republicans in Congress lied about health care. No one's going to lose their health care. Meanwhile, 10 million Americans by the nonpartisan CBO are going to be kicked off of healthcare. They lied about that. They lied about food supports. They're lying about what's happening in facilities just like this. They're lying about the Epstein files. Take your pick. We have a president who can't handle the truth. Because once the public finds out that truth, there will be a reckoning. And so I want to thank and applaud my colleagues here from Team Maryland for standing together for the truth. With that, I'll turn it over to one of those colleagues, the other U.S. Senator from Maryland, Alsobrooks.
Well, you know, this has been a difficult morning already, and I want to just first level set about why we're here. We are here because we have not only a responsibility but a right to be here, and that right was given to us by the people. All of the people standing here are elected by the people. We were sent here to do this work, and so we represent them, their voices, their values, their desires. And it occurs to me, even as I walked into this dark, shameful, awful building, that this building belongs to the people. This is a federal building. It's owned by us. This is not Donald Trump's building. This building belongs to Marylanders, and it belongs to Americans. And, you know, my observation in coming here today is that this administration is really ruling by fear, and there's so much shame. So this building is full of people who feel ashamed of the work that they are doing. And why do you know they're ashamed? Because we saw some up in the hallway, they have their faces covered, the people who have blanketed, not just Maryland, to carry out this evil. But the ones who across the country have to cover their faces to go to work. Ask yourself, if you're doing the right thing, if you have to cover your face, you can't even let people see. But there's an attempt to make people feel fearful. But there's also a shame, and what I'm going to tell you this: the fear will pass, the shame that our country will carry as a result of this conduct and so many other things will last for generations. The shame of it all. And also be clear, there are people who have been detained. These are humans. And by the way, we represent every single living person in the state of Maryland. Whether they got here 3 days ago or 30 years ago, or have lived their whole lives here, we represent every living person who lives in the state. And this is the most inhumane thing we have seen. They lock the doors because, again, they're ashamed. They can't even come out of their offices. They're ashamed to face any of us. But I tell you again, we're going to reap this. We're going to reap what we have done here. And this president doesn't give a rat's ass about any of us. Some of the people who have been detained in this building have relatives who probably voted. And he doesn't care about them either. And it is just a long line of people. What the American people need to see is this man doesn't care about any of us. Any of us. You know, we recently had the flood, the awful flood in the western part of the state. People's lives and livelihood taken away from them. And what is the response of this administration is to deny us disaster relief again. And those are people, many of them, who voted for him. And you know why? Again, because he could care less really about any of us. And so we're going to continue to do this work to make sure we're shining a light. We're not only demanding that the rights of the people who are here be respected, that we be allowed to carry out the work that we were sent to do, but we are also here to shine a light on the evil, the sheer evil that is happening in our country. You know, evil persists in darkness, and you can look at this ugly, this is a dark, ugly situation that is happening here. And the person who was sent to us to give us, she couldn't give us any information. She's supposed to be the acting director. She doesn't know how many people are here. She couldn't give you anything. And again, because all of these people are fearful and ashamed. And it's a terrible thing. So I'm going to hand over now to my colleague, Congressman Glenn Ivey of Hollen.
Thank you to my colleagues. Thanks for all of you coming out today. I went to El Salvador about 6 weeks ago, and I wasn't shocked that I was turned away at the door when I went to visit a prison there, because they don't have the longest history of democracy there, and arguably they don't have it right now. But this is unbelievable that they would turn us away from this building here in the United States, members of Congress with the right to go see our constituents, and not only that, The power of the purse under the Constitution gives us the authority and the obligation to conduct oversight hearings, to make sure the money's being spent wisely. They wouldn't even let us get in to do that. Now, what was odd was when we talked to the director, the mouthpiece they sent out, I asked her, are attorneys allowed to go back in there? And she said yes. The staff, as you heard a moment ago, was allowed to go in there a few months ago. But it's incredible that they can go in, but we can't. We control the power of the purse. We're not allowed to go in and see what's going on. They don't want us to go in. They're scared of what we'll see. But at the end of the day, sunlight is the best disinfectant, and there will be sunlight on this. There will be accountability. There will be oversight. It's going to happen, and we're going to keep working until we get it. Now I'll turn it over to my colleague, Sarah Elfreth from
Thank you, Congressman Ivey. Folks, if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, and our constituents are being housed and detained upstairs, this is a detention facility, and the law is clear that Congress has the right and responsibility to conduct oversight. And I would hope that every American, Democrat, Republican, unaffiliated, sitting at home watching this would agree and want their Congress, their elected representatives, to conduct thorough oversight. I would hope they would agree with the fundamental constitutional right of due process and the rule of law. Just another observation to add on to my colleague's eloquent observations. Being new to Congress, I turned to Senator Van Hollen and said, pre-Trump administration, how many locked doors of a federal office have you encountered? And he said none. And yet this is the second time. First was USAID. We visited Social Security. We're visiting this. The amount of locked doors your members of Congress are experiencing while conducting, again, their legal right to exercise oversight should astonish every single American, regardless of your party affiliation. But just because we had a locked door in front of us, and just because the director provided absolutely no assurances to us that our constituents are being treated humanely. And I've had a number of constituents pass through these doors, some who have not had access to their medications, some who have had their license and credit cards taken away and still not returned to this day, despite them being released by ICE. We have a right and responsibility to advocate for our constituents. That's what we did today, and it's what we will continue to do every single day from here on out. Thank you.
We're going to obviously take a few questions from those of you in the press. If you could just identify yourself before your question, that would help all of us.
Yeah, Congressman, hi, Jeff Barker with the Baltimore Sun. So I know you wanted to generally tour the facility, but were there specific things you were looking for, health and safety conditions, et cetera?
Well, those were among the things. We don't know what to look for if we can't get in, but we were very much concerned about the health of individuals. And as the senator said, these are not people necessarily who've been convicted of crimes. These are people who just got snatched, coming out of church, coming out of the Walmart. 80% of them have no criminal record. And so their health and their safety is important because many of them have children who they can't even contact. So it, again, is disheartening that the acting director, who, by the way, said she's been on the job for 3 months, comes in and changes what was the previous policy 4 months ago. And so we're unable, Jeff, to see anything at all as a result of that. As I said in my opening remarks, we banged on the door and banged on the door and then had to ultimately do a sit-in in front of the door. And we all sat there until she came out from another entrance. But it's pathetic that nobody can tell you what's going on in there except the people who work there. And as Senator Alsobrooks said, many of them are ashamed.
Jeff, one other thing that was already mentioned, I just want to reiterate. Our teams have been to this facility. They came in March, and they reported then that there were some concerns. So when you're saying, what are we looking for? We've heard from the families of many who have been detained here about the horrible conditions, about the lack of access to medical care when necessary, medications, lack of access to medications they needed, and other really inhumane conditions. And so we're also here following up, not because we're hearing specifically from family members about the inhumane conditions in this facility, and it is also supported by what our teams have been here to visit as well, our staff. So that's the other reason we're now returning after a March visit.
Yeah, I would encourage everybody just to look at some of the lawsuits that have been filed by people who have been held here. And we have copies if you're interested of a lawsuit that was filed by two women who were detained here. I'll just read the summary of their complaint. They complain about overcrowding, cold temperatures, inadequate access to food, to water, to medicine. One of them was a diabetic, and they didn't immediately provide the medication. Sleep, hygiene, and in their case, delayed connection with any kind of legal counsel. Those are just two of the stories that we have a lot of questions about, because scores of people have been through this center. And when our staff came here representing us back in March, we had more questions than answers. We came back today to get more answers. They obviously don't want to provide answers.
Other than this law, I'm Brenda Ritter with Baltimore Banner. I'm wondering, other than this law that you shared, what other congressional tools in the toolbox do you have to exercise your authority? And if so, what are they and what's next to hold the people in this building accountable?
Well, I'll let my colleagues respond, but as a senior member of the Oversight Committee, this is top of the agenda for me. Unfortunately, the Speaker of the House, not wanting to talk about the Jeffrey Epstein matter, sent everybody home for an early recess. But the day we return, I will raise this with Chairman Comer and other members of the committee. I'm going to seek as best I can to get some sort of bipartisan consensus that the committee finds a way to prevent this sort of thing from happening anywhere around the country. Short of that, I'm going to reach out to the Maryland Attorney General here, Anthony Brown, just to get his thinking on some of this. As you know, he's been very active in his challenges against this administration. But as a member of the committee, I think it's very important that the committee go on record.
Madeline May with CBS News. How many people who are being held in this detention center have been identified? If any.
Yeah, to my knowledge, we've not gotten a full list. We have a partial list.
Okay. How many people are on the partial list?
Right. Well, we don't. They wouldn't tell us how many people are there now.
Yeah.
She said she didn't know how many people.
So they
Okay.
this is the director of this office, acting director, who could not tell us how many people they were detaining today, or how long that they've been detained. We do know some of the folks who've been through here. I mentioned the pastor, but there have been others. Grego Garcia was taken here. So we're not letting go of this. There's also an appropriations process in the House and the Senate where we can try to use the tools of the appropriations law. That is the tool we used actually to require that that members of Congress be allowed in, which they are ignoring. But you know, we will work with Republicans. The problem is, as was just mentioned, Republicans are just not willing to stand up to Donald Trump in support of due process in the Constitution.
So ICE isn't volunteering any kind of information. We hear about these arrests from our constituents. We are tagged on social media, and then our teams go to work reaching out to the families, reaching out to the attorneys, connecting them with resources, and then contacting ICE. Sometimes we get a response, oftentimes we don't, and that should also be alarming to the American people that this administration is not responding. If this is how they're treating their elected officials, their members of Congress, how are they treating everyday Americans? So I would encourage folks to reach out to our offices if we can be of assistance, and again, we will fight every single day to make sure we're representing our constituents.
Rosemary Quiñones with Telemundo 44 and NBC4. She said that you should contact her office. Are you planning to come back? Like follow that process that she gave and come back?
Well, it's a consensus that the group hasn't gotten to because we expected to be inside, quite frankly, at this time. But we will meet and gather shortly thereafter. Now, I know somebody is thinking, well, why not just reach out to the Justice Department so that they can get involved? Let me just say for the record, this Justice Department under Donald Trump is the Just ICE Department. That's all we get from them. And so looking for some sort of relief there is not necessarily possible, I think. But we're going to get together and figure out next steps. I know what I'm going to be doing, and Chris raised a good point about appropriations. There are tools still left.
Just to clarify there, they've been moving the goalposts here, right? So there was a period within even the last week, I think, where they said, well, you just have to give 7 days notice. The statute doesn't require notice, but their position as of right now should be very clear. They're not letting anybody know, regardless of notice or how long the notice is. This is a lawless administration. Remember, this Trump administration actually filed a lawsuit against every Maryland federal district court judge because they were defending due process rights. Because Maryland federal judges were defending the Constitution, they filed a lawsuit against all of them. That's what kind of lawless administration we've got.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
So you are housing people by ICE's own admission. So I guess the question is, who is telling you that you should violate this very clear provision of law? Is that from the second?
Just that your jurisdiction to, I guess, look at detention facility oversight. That's different than.
I'd be happy to share this with you. It doesn't say detention center anywhere in the law.
Any facility.
So what is,
Any facility.
so with respect, what is the basis of
I'm
your
just
claim?
telling you that at this point, we're not allowing the use of our tours or oversight of, or just tours of our holding facility. At this time, you guys
whose
were
decision is
provided notification to our office of Progression of
No, we
Relations.
provided notification last week. It's been a week now.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Now,
I
who
understand that.
has
At
given
this
you
time,
the order not to allow us?
Who's giving the order?
Who is giving it to
These are the
you?
instructions that have been given from our headquarters department that at this time we're not allowing any visits of our hold room. The oversight that you're talking about doesn't fall within over hold rooms and things of that nature.
It's oversight of any facility. Any facility.
Okay, I understand.
The law is
that.
very clear on that.
I mean,
It's crystal clear, yeah, please.
you should take it there, just so you can read it. It says any facility. So actually, you're breaking the law right
Well, this is not a facility, this is just an office, a field office where we process it.
But you're detaining units
Well, they
here,
come
right?
to custody here.
Yeah.
They get processed and then they get transferred to another facility because we don't have detention here. Because of the Dignity Not Detention law that was passed, we can't house them.
So how do you define detention? Because they're being held here, right?
They're here
not
for
free to
process,
leave.
they're here for processing.
And they're not free to leave.
And then, well, they come into ICE custody.
Right, so they're detained. They're not free to leave.
Okay, I understand that. I get that.
But the normal standard, as you know, I think,
Okay.
is 12 hours, right? That's the normal standard, the limit on the amount of time, right? That's the standard for detention, right?
I understand what you're saying, okay.
But, and there was a waiver internally
Okay.
that ICE decided to exercise to allow people to stay beyond the 7 days.
Okay.
Because people are sleeping here, right?
We're bats here.
I mean, people are sleeping.
Okay, and.
Are people sleeping here?
Can you confirm that the people are sleeping?
Well, or they've been here for days without being able to sleep, right? Because people have been held up to over 60 hours here,
Yeah,
right?
you can confirm that people are sleeping in this area, whatever you want to call it. They're
We're held here
sleeping.
in the detention space.
They're detained and they're sleeping.
They are detained here.
And they're
yes.
sleeping.
They are detained.
Ma'am,
Are they
with
fed
all
while
due
they're here?
respect.
Are they fed while they're
Everybody
here?
has to be fed while they're here.
Ma'am,
Is that a yes or a no? They're fed?
Yes.
Okay.
with all due respect.
Mm-hmm.
You are breaking the law at someone else's direction.
Okay.
And I want to make sure that we were real clear with what the law was and what it is. It's federal law.
Okay.
And as members of the United States House and Senate, we want to make it clear to you so that you cannot say later on that you did not know that your refusal to allow us to gain entry is a violation of federal law. You are breaking the law. So you've been told that and explained that. We've read it to you.
Okay.
And is your decision still not to let us in?
It is, sir. At this time, unfortunately.
Okay, and we gave you the copy, you had a chance to take a look at it, right? It
Well,
says what
not
we told
to
you.
look at it, but you
Well,
just handed
take
it
a
over
look,
to me.
please look.
You just handed
It
it over.
it
to
really
me.
take a
is
look.
important for the person who's supervising this facility
Yeah.
to understand.
It's not a facility, it's a field office, but okay.
Well,
But
you,
people are
sleeping
you are,
in
you are housing, are you housing people overnight?
It's a field office.
Are you housing people
We
overnight?
have to hold people here until we can get them processed, so
And
they can be
it's-
transferred to long-term detention.
And in some cases, that's been over 60 hours, right?
Can you say
You
they're
don't
being
know?
transferred to long-term detention because this is what, short-term detention?
It's not detention, ma'am.
Well,
I've
you
been
said they're
very
being
clear.
detained.
I've been very clear that this is the field.
Well, you answered the question about whether they're being detained, and you said they are.
Okay.
So what would you call the place where you're being detained? Do you,
Our field office.
it's a detention area, right?
Not a detention
Well, if
center.
it's not a detention
That's
area,
why
why
you
can't we
guys
go
have
back there?
oversight of
If it's a regular
detention.
federal
We have
office.
oversight of every facility, every building. That's congressional oversight. And as a member, a senior member of the Oversight Committee, I'm telling you that your interpretation of the law is not correct. Could you just tell us your name and so that we'll know who we're meeting with?
Yes, I've introduced myself to you just a few minutes ago.
I want-
Acting Director Nikita Baker.
Acting Director Nikita Baker.
That's correct.
Okay. Well, Ms. Baker, I'm sorry that we were not legally and lawfully allowed entrance here. And we will in all likelihood come back again. That there are people who you report to who I think owe an explanation, if not to us, certainly to the American people long after this hour is over with, as to why they gave you those orders and who they got them from.
Director Baker, may I ask a few other questions?
Sure.
Thank you. Do you know how many individuals are in the office that are not employees?
Do I know right now? No.
Is that something you could follow up
Yes.
with us? Appreciate
Send me
that.
some questions.
Okay. Do you have a sense of how long individuals are here, whether you consider them detained or not?
You mean a sense? Do I have an idea?
Not that
Varies.
sense, okay.
Varies.
May I ask what that range tends to be?
Within the confines of our memo. We're very fine.
The lawyer memo or?
Within our limits here, yeah.
What is that time frame? I mean, per his question,
Okay.
yeah. What is the average?
The average,
Yeah.
maybe a day or two, maybe less than that, just
So
depends.
24 hours or 24 to 48 hours?
It
You
depends
said
on
a
the
day
day.
or two,
Yeah.
right? So day is 24 hours, so 24 to 48 hours?
It just depends.
Are you sending people out on Saturdays and Sundays?
We're sending people out every day.
7 days a week?
Every day.
But the pastor from the Eastern Shore who was recently detained here, you see, he detained over 60 hours.
I do not know.
With respect, there's been a lot of discussion.
You're asking me this right now. I don't have the information in front of me to tell you.
It is troubling that we don't know how many
Sir, people are arrested on a daily basis in this building.
how many people are being detained?
Okay, they have not looked.
Within two or three.
How much space do you have right
Have
now?
enough space.
How many people could you hold at one
Do you have any follow-up questions? I said, go send me an email.
time? Well, you know this one. It's not like you gotta go find the information. So how many people can you hold? You send them out?
Yes, you can.
More than 5?
More than 5.
More than 10?
I would say yes.
More than 20?
I would say yes.
So you can have more than 20 people in here at any given time?
Yes, we can.
Do they get access to medical treatment?
If they need medical services, yes, they get
Are
access.
are they taken out for medical treatment or is the
They are
medical?
taken out for medical treatment.
Okay, do doctors ever come in, do doctors or nurses ever come in to provide medical treatment?
They are taking out medical treatment.
All right. Do they have access to medical?
Yes, they do.
All right, so lawyers are allowed to come here?
If they want to see their clients, they can, if they're here, and they're here.
So you'll let lawyers come in but not Congress?
They can come and speak to their clients, yes.
We can't speak to our constituents.
No, you can.
Can you let us know why you're not allowing, why you're not allowing these detainees to sign these personal disclosure statements that allow members of
Why am I not
Congress,
allowing them?
members of Congress to ask questions on their behalf? Yeah.
No one's asking to sign a disclosure. You guys showed up today,
No, no, no,
so
no,
I'm
no,
not
I'm talking about-
understanding you're saying that I don't
So
understand.
no,
your question.
I think if you're detained here,
Okay.
and sometimes congressional offices send those families notices asking them for permission to inquire deeply into their case. I'm told that you're not allowing that to happen. Is that true?
I don't know, that doesn't sound accurate.
Can I ask you why you changed your policy? Because back in, I think, March of this year, a number of us had staff that were able to come here. They saw a lot of people detained. They saw people on the floor. They talked about lack of medical attention, which is one of the reasons we're mad to see there's been any change. So why the change? Why they will allow it to come before, and now you're saying we can't, the members kind of stand by
Operational
ourselves.
tempo has changed, so operational, not allowing the business to hold them. Because I instructed you guys.
Did they tell you why not?
What does operational tempo mean? What do you mean by that?
It's exactly what it sounds like, changes in operations. We're very busy.
More people are being brought in, is that what you
Unfortunately,
mean?
at this point, we're not doing any tours of proposals. I think
Did they
that's the
give you a
reason why you
rationale?
guys are here.
As the director, did they give you a rationale as to why you should operationally offer us a chance to see what's happening? The people here must be deeply ashamed. They don't want anyone to see it.
Okay, so that's just your interpretation of it, ma'am.
Let me give you another interpretation. I'm old enough to remember when black people were snatched off the streets in this country because they were black, not because they committed a crime or suspected of anything. And that was not that long ago. So that's a perspective that haunts many of us. It certainly haunts me. And I would hope, as a black woman coming out to tell us what you did without any real explanation, I hope later today that that sort of spirit haunts your soul and that you realize that that is more important than a job.
Yeah. Director Baker, I just have two more questions.
I am done. Thank you very much.
Who is your next up supervisor? Who told you to not let us in today?
I would say have a nice day. I appreciate you guys
You
coming
won't
out.
tell us who.
I
gave you
appreciate
that
you guys
directive?
coming out today.
You won't tell us who gave you
You
that
guys were given
directive?
direction when you reached out for office.
Did you get something in writing that
Relations.
told you not to do it, or was it just a phone call?
Sir, it wasn't even a phone call. We were told that nobody is allowed to tour our holdings. You
Was
guys
that-
did not have oversight
Was
to
that-
do so. That
Oh,
same,
yeah, we
do
did.
have
It's
a
right
that
there.
same section
You
of
can deny
law.
it if you
Committee
want.
of oversight.
Was the person that told you that we couldn't come in here, did they talk to you directly? Or was it over?
Nobody called me or anything of that nature. That's-
Well, you said somebody told you not to let
I
us in.
provided.
We're going now.
That we were not doing open tours. But I
So
do
you won't,
appreciate you
you won't
guys
tell
coming
us
out.
who
You
told you?
committed to answering some of the questions I answered earlier, which you didn't. And I have your direct contacts, and I personally can ask those questions.
So we reach out to the Office of
Yeah,
Congressional
may I have your direct
Relations. We
information?
reach out to the Office of Congressional
May I
Relations.
ask why you're uncomfortable or
We're going down, everybody.
Why are you on and I appreciate you offering the answer. I just want to make sure that I have a direct contact to the director of this office so that I and my colleagues can have our questions, which have gone unanswered for weeks, answered by you. And if you're
Okay, when you
committed to do
say
that,
unanswered for weeks, who have you been reaching out to?
our staffs have been following up with many questions and concerns, following their visit, which you did
It's the
allow.
first time that I'm hearing.
Well, that's why I'd like to have your direct contact so I can
Do you have a
share.
card?
I do, as a matter of fact. I'm happy to give you.
I mean, I guess we could show you some of the,
And
if you wanna see the letters, it's not like we have been contacting you all in writing.
Okay, that's the director of ICE, that doesn't come to me.
Well, that's why I'm
That's
asking.
why we
who
want to
told
talk to
you,
you, ma'am.
To not let us in. That's why I'm asking who it is.
Guys, we're
Anybody
not
else have
getting
a business
anywhere.
card? But I appreciate you guys coming out.
And you'll follow up with that, with
Yes,
your information?
yes, sir.
Okay, and I will follow up, and then about how long should we expect for answers to some of those questions, like how many
Well,
individuals are
whenever
here?
you get more questions, I'll get them back to you as soon as I can.
Okay.
I only got two here. Is that it? Any other staffers? Individuals? These are all your chiefs of staff individuals?
Yes.
Okay.
And then, are there any conditions under which you will let anyone visit this facility? Or is it a blanket prohibition for
Right
all
now,
individuals?
our operations, we are not allowing tours of our hold rooms. I appreciate you guys coming out.
I
Well, when you
understand that
just said
wasn't.
you let medical personnel and attorneys
I
go.
didn't say anything about medical personnel.
Right, I was just trying to understand the
They
full
don't get a
landscape.
tour either.
That's not a full
Guys, let's, I don't think we're gonna get any further than we've gotten,
Yes.
unfortunately, with this young lady. So,
Thank you, I appreciate you guys.
Thank you,
coming out.
Director.
So I'm told we reach out to the public outreach email and nobody
Not
responds.
public outreach, Office of Congressional Relations, they have a
So in the past, our office has reached out.
Through that and its work. Somehow it's been shut down.
Well,
So we'll
I
be
don't
in
have
touch
any
with you.
control of that, sir.
We'll be in touch.
Thank